Hi, I'm Gemily, and in this video we'll be looking at forgiveness. Why forgiveness is important, what forgiveness is and what it isn't, and what to do when it's hard to forgive. Forgiveness is a precept emphasized in many spiritual frameworks. It's important for the health of a community, as well as for the individuals involved. If people within a community, like within a church or a scout group, a book club even, anything, if they can't forgive each other, then the group becomes splintered. It becomes diseased, and it can become toxic with bitchiness and gossiping and division. On an individual level, holding on to resentment can cause physical changes in your body. Our physical body is connected with our emotional and mental states, so unforgiveness will have physical consequences for you. And maybe for the other person, if they're resentful towards you in return, or if they're aware of the resentment you hold towards them and it causes them stress. We're human, and it's inevitable that we're going to tread on some people's toes and offend them even when we don't mean to. So this is something that works both ways, and it's important for us to have generous thoughts towards other people and assume the best of them. Give them the benefit of the doubt if they do something that offends you. If we're quick to take offense at other people, then we're giving ourselves a lot of work to do in the cleanup of forgiveness. If you're someone who is quick to take offense, it might be worth your while taking some time to look into that. Perhaps the narrative of you as an innocent victim is comforting to you for some reason, or you're trying to avoid a sense of unworthiness. That's something in itself that's worth taking some time to ponder, to meditate on, to pray about, to maybe speak with a counselor about. See if you can become a person who doesn't take offense quickly. So forgiveness is the releasing of a negative emotional charge that we place around a person or an action. And that releasing of that negative charge doesn't necessarily mean that you have to wipe what happened from your mind or not learn from it. And you definitely don't need to become a doormat or subject yourself to traumatic or abusive situations. Sometimes people hurt us, sometimes intentionally, sometimes in unacceptable ways that they refuse to acknowledge. In these situations, forgiveness doesn't mean saying it's okay and allowing this to continue. In these extreme situations, sometimes forgiveness can only occur once you've removed yourself from the situation, once you're taking care of your own needs. You can't use forgiveness to heal a wound if it's continually being reopened. But even in less extreme circumstances than this, forgiveness can still be difficult to invoke. And I suggest using techniques like loving kindness meditation or really honest prayer to help support you in the process. Forgiveness comes in 3 layers. The first layer, the deepest layer, is the emotional layer. Beyond that, there's a rational layer, and the most external is a practical layer. So layer 1, the emotional, this is the really personal feelings we have, the feelings of resentment that we want to release when we forgive, so that we can feel positive feelings, or at least neutral feelings, so that we're no longer emotionally disturbed by that person or the memory of the events. But this is the point we want to get to. So let's just start here. Can you let go of the negative feelings you have towards this person for the actions they made? If you can let it go, then fantastic. You've just forgiven. Well done. If not, then we'll leave that for now and take a step back to the second layer, the rational layer. This involves changing your thinking about a person or an event, changing the narrative that you tell yourself. Try imagining the action from the other person's point of view, and take your time with this. And you're not allowed to imagine that they're just a mean and spiteful person who likes being offensive for no reason, because that is no one. Everyone is doing their best, we just have different definitions of that. So step into their shoes, take time to think about reasons why you might behave the way that they did. It might still not make the behavior acceptable, but it might help you in understanding the complexity of the situation. And maybe it had very little to do with you. Maybe it's just a whole web of completely independent events and pain that that person is carrying, which just brushed up against you. In which case, finding compassion for that person might be very useful in forgiving them. Also, try to deconstruct your own pride a bit. Have you never needed forgiveness? Could be a big thing that brought you shame, or just a little thing like bumping into someone. Think of how hard things could have been, or perhaps were, if forgiveness had been withheld. And let yourself feel grateful for the forgiveness that you have received in your life. Now, these aren't 5-minute activities. Set aside a good chunk of time to really go deep with these. Maybe 40 minutes for each one. Or if you can't set aside a big chunk of time, just carry them with you for a few days, just returning and returning. Give it time to sink deep into your soul. Give it time to start having an effect. Now, check in with your emotions. Can you let the resentment go yet? If these practices haven't allowed you to reach a space where you can forgive, then it's time to move on to the third layer, the practical. If working on it internally isn't enough, it's time to take it external. Perhaps you need to be actively reconciled with that other person before you can forgive them. Perhaps you really just want to hear them say sorry. Hot tip, you won't always get that. It's worth a try, but it can't be your be-all and end-all to forgiveness, because forgiveness is something for you as well. In fact, primarily it's for you. So you can't let someone else be in control of the feelings that you're feeling. But sometimes hearing an apology is a really powerful thing. So if you can control your emotions, talking to them can be a really powerful tool for reconciliation. Find or make an appropriate moment to tell them how you're feeling. But be careful. If you do this with anger and with blame, you're likely to just make things worse. I suggest before you not confront the person, but before you talk to the person, do some research on nonviolent communication. There are tons of YouTube videos about it, and it's really very effective. I'll add some links to videos on nonviolent communication in the description. But the main key is to tell them how you're feeling in non-accusative language. So instead of saying, "You upset me," say things like, "When you did this, I felt like this. When this happened, I felt this way." And maybe you could even explain why you felt this way if you're aware of it. Perhaps you could say, "I felt this way because I have insecurities in this area already," or "I'm already dealing with a lot of stuff with this," or simply because I interpret those actions to mean this, which maybe they don't. This requires some vulnerability on your part, which can be hard to offer that other person if you don't feel that you really trust them right now. But sometimes to open this reconciliation, vulnerability has to come forth. And if you're the one who's working on this forgiveness, then there's no reason why you shouldn't start. Opening the door of vulnerability just a crack allows you to relate to this other person on a completely different, really honest, real level. And even if they've behaved in unacceptable ways before now, sometimes just seeing you put down those barriers can be really disarming for them too. Before you know it, you might be connecting on a really good level. But it takes that vulnerability to get to that level of honesty. After you've said your piece, you've explained that when this thing happened, you felt a certain way, perhaps because, the next thing for you to do is to listen. Give the other person a chance to reply, and do really try and hear what they're saying, because it might not be what you expect. Usually, people will be horrified to discover that they've upset you. They may offer extra information that you didn't have before that changes the picture entirely. If they do get defensive, stay calm. Resist the urge to engage them further with your own defensiveness. You can't fight fire with fire, so leave them with some kind words and exit the conversation. If doing this in person is a bit too scary, or you're pretty sure it won't go well, then maybe you could write a letter instead. But if you do write a letter, be extra careful with your choice of words, especially if that other person has any sense that perhaps you are holding some resentment towards them, because they will read it with the tone that they are expecting, or the tone that matches with how they're feeling. And perhaps a letter telling them that something they did was upsetting to you could easily be misinterpreted. So if you're going to take this route, I do suggest getting really honest, allowing yourself to be really vulnerable in what you write, and perhaps send it with a gift. Have some chocolates with it, because that's a really clear gesture that you have goodwill towards them. If this doesn't work, perhaps try consulting a third party, like a counselor. You could also consult a friend, perhaps, but if you do this, be really careful so that it doesn't turn into a bit of a bitch session. Make sure your language is constructive and your thoughts are generous, and that the person that you are speaking with knows this is your intention. If you've tried all these things and you still haven't found a way forward in forgiveness, then I think there's only one thing for it. Take some time away from this person if you can, and get serious about prayer and meditation. Because ultimately, your feelings of resentment are your responsibility, not theirs. For me, I found that the most powerful thing with this is to be super honest in my prayer. Don't pray the way you think you should. Pray really honestly so you really get in touch with your feelings. It gives you time to get to the bottom of why you can't forgive. It allows you space to unearth the things that you are carrying and find what you need in order to make that step towards forgiveness. But whatever you do, don't pretend you've forgiven to yourself when you haven't. Yes, of course, act politely to other people, be civil. If you can, even be friendly. It'll make telling the other person about your feelings a lot more fruitful. But don't pretend to yourself that everything's fine when it's not, because what you'll just be doing then is burying the feeling, ignoring it, but still carrying it. And you'll forget that it's there. And so you won't be doing the work that you need to for yourself. Don't rush forgiveness because you feel you should. It's the right thing to do. Be really honest, take the time that you need. Sometimes it takes a really long time, and sometimes things in your life need to change before you're in a space where you can forgive. But do keep working on it, because it's absolutely worth doing. So there are some pathways of forgiveness that I've used personally that have really helped me. I hope they can help you too. If you're currently working towards forgiving someone, then well done for being so proactive to look into it like this. I'm really proud of you, and I hope it goes well. Feel free to share about your experiences with forgiveness in the comments, perhaps the times that it went really well for you, it surprised you maybe, or times that it's been really hard. Or just how forgiveness has helped you in your life, or any other tips you'd like to add. If you've liked this video, then like this video, subscribe for weekly content from me, and you're most welcome to follow me on Instagram at @GemmaLimez. You are wonderful. Bless. On an individual level, holding on to resentment can cause physical blah, but our body is connected with our spiritual, our emotional, blah, oh my gosh, so many. But our physical body, too much noise.